Death has taken our beloved Stephen. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there's loneliness. Lost in their sorrow may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, be with them. For Steve's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. Those who wish may join me in the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. In the rising of the sun and its going down, we will remember Steve. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, in the opening of buds and the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, in the beginning of the year when it ends, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys to share, we'll remember Steve. So long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. We are assembled with our friends in the darkness that has fallen on them. We raise our voices together to the source of life, asking for comfort and strength. We need light when gloom darkens our lives. We need fortitude and courage when pain and loss assail us. May we find these in God, who preserves from destruction all that is good. Let us find them too in loved ones and companions. Who among us has not passed through trials and bereavements? Some bear fresh wounds in their hearts, and therefore feel more keenly the kinship of sorrow. Others whose days of mourning are more remote still recall the comfort that sympathy brought to our sorrowing hearts. May our sharing of sorrow and our deeds of solace be comfort to the loved ones of Steve. We're here today to remember, to pay tribute, and to offer support to the family of Steve. We are here as friends. We are here as siblings. We are here as children. And no matter what our relationship is amongst each other and amongst the deceased Steve, we must remember that we came here for a purpose. To express our sorrow and to help those who are mourning. Unfortunately, it wasn't too long ago that we all gathered here. And my relationship is not just professional with this family. We're related. Not going to go in how, but I guess I can. My grandmother and their great-grandmother, Amanda's great-grandmother, were sisters. We go back. Our families knew each other. Ralph and Marlene and my parents were friends. They would visit each other in Florida at times. We always enjoyed this side of the family. Steve, to me, was always, I considered, the gentle giant. That's how I knew him. People know a person different ways. I can only give you how I knew him. To me, he was the gentle giant. He was larger than life. He was a big boy. And I can say, because I'm much older than he was, so I can say he was a big boy. But he never failed to ask me how I was, how my family is. I remembered I helped at one time get him a job at one of the local synagogues. And he enjoyed it for a while, and then, Steve decided, I'll move on. Maybe I won't. But that was Steve. In fact, I heard a story here from one of his neighbors that he was like the watchman of the neighborhood. If someone got a package, he would call him up and say, you have a package. I mean, that's the way he was. There was a soft side to him. I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him, because as I said, he was a big boy. But those are my reflections of him. And now I'm going to call first upon Alan to say some remarks, and then call upon Amanda, and she's going to say some remarks also.
Definitely going to need my glasses. Not yours, mine. It's here somewhere. In my bag of goodies. That's what I'm looking for. I need this. 1973. I'm like 16 years old. Steve's 20 years old. We're 4 years apart. And he shows me this. He says, you gotta see the coolest thing in the entire world. This is Jay Giles' band. And I'm colorblind, but I think that's red. He says, this is the coolest thing in the world. And then we started listening to it, and I go, yeah, this is some pretty cool music. And then this morning, I don't have a turntable, so I have no use for this thing, but I put it on my phone. I played the song Give It To Me by Jay Giles, and I started crying because it reminded me of Steve. Steve is my music guru. What I didn't learn on my own, Steve provided for me in the form of Mott the Hoople and Dave Mason and Elton John. Not ABBA. Steve wasn't into ABBA, neither am I. But I easily used his record collection when we were kids. When he was still living at home, I'd sneak up to his room and play his albums. And that's where I got a lot of my musical culture from. Larry, on the other hand, turned me on to Simon and Garfunkel, and Simon and Garfunkel, and I think Simon and Garfunkel. My brother Steve musically was not always right. Now I'm going to go back to 1965 when a group called the Dave Clark Five became pretty big. They were one of the British invasion groups. And Steve swore to me. He swore to me. He said, Dave Clark Five is going to be bigger than the Beatles. And I said, you're nuts. I mean, you're crazy. I'm like 8 years old and he's 12 and I'm telling him he's wrong. I was right. He was wrong. There's a 2-year difference in age, getting smacked here, with all of our siblings. Steve was 2 years older than Larry, Larry 2 years older than me, I was 2 years older than Rana, Rana was 2 years older than Michael. And there's some kind of sense of order to that because the oldest one was able to pound on the guy right behind him. So Steve would pound on Larry, and then Larry would pound on me. And I wanted to pound on Rana, but I was trying to be chivalrous. Anyway, I didn't, and I'm sure Rana... Yeah, I skipped a cycle, kind of went to Michael a little bit. No, never laid a hand on Rana or Michael, but I'm thankful that Steve didn't touch me because if he had, like Bart said, it may have been carnage. He was just a lot bigger than me, and my only advantage over Steve was, man, I can run much faster than him. So there was no time ever, at any time ever, Steve could catch me. Now, that lack of foot speed is going to come in as a theme in this eulogy. We also, besides music, had sports in common. He would call me randomly to ask me a stupid trivia question. I don't know how this popped into his head, but he'd ask me a question, for example, who was the first baseman for the Indians in 1981? And I'd say, well, it was Mike Hargrove, of course. And he'd say, oh, yeah, that's right. And I'd say, well, what are you asking that question for? And he'd say, oh, I just wanted to know. I was just curious, and I figured you'd know. And I think that was before the days of being able to Google these answers. So I was like kind of his go-to guy for trivia. And that remained up until the end. He would call me up and ask me, again, random stupid questions, and I would do the best I can to answer them. Pretty much always able to answer them because they weren't hard questions. Steve and I played softball together for a few years, and he's a big guy, and he'd hit the ball real far on occasion. And he was really good at legging a triple into a double, or a double into a single. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine Friday after Steve passed, Joe Bicilli, and Joe was on this team, and Joe said to me, I remember one time at Monticello, we were playing our arch rival, and Steve hit the ball as far as I've ever seen anybody hit the ball. And I think he got a home run. But he also had to stop at second base for oxygen, at third base for Gatorade, but he made it all the way home. Michelle and I lived at Richmond Park when we first got married, which was very close to where Steve and Barbie lived and the kids lived on Wilson Mills. So we spent a lot of time on Sundays going over to their house, and particularly when the weather was good, we'd ride our bicycles that whopping 1.5 mile distance or whatever it is, and we'd go over there and we'd spend time with the kids, Jason and Amanda. And I have to say that Steve and Barbie proved to be a strong incentive for Michelle and I to have children of our own. Not that we weren't going to do that anyway, but Jason and Amanda turned out okay. And I don't think it had anything to do with Michelle and myself. There's no doubt that Steve had weaknesses and demons in his life over the years, and there were times that I would get very angry with him, and my siblings would get very angry with him. But I can't tell you the number of times that an old friend of Steve, some of which are here today, or a work client, because Steve worked at Sills Insurance before me, would say, "Hey, how's Steve doing?" And I would say, "He's doing okay. He's doing fine, and he's coping or whatever." And the answer from the person I'm talking to that asked how he was doing was always the same. It was something like, "Oh, Steve's such a good guy," or "He's got such a good heart." And in spite of all the times that I'd be angry at Steve for whatever shenanigans he was up to, everyone consistently said the same thing about him, that he had a good heart, that he was a good guy. I even said it, as mad as I was at him at times. In the last few years, we reconnected, Steve and I. I mean, there were times where I wasn't talking to him, but we reconnected. And it makes me feel real good now that we did so, because life is short and you only have so much time, and you know these grudges that you hold with people are somewhat insignificant over the long course of things. And I remember all the good times that we had as children, not just with Steve, but with Larry and Michael and even Rana. When my mom was sick back in December, before she passed, we got together at my house, or at Michelle's and my house, for dinner and drinks, and I do mean drinks, and game night. I never seen my brother Steve more happy than that night. And for days afterwards, he kept calling us and thanking us for putting that all together and making that making him part of the family, and kept saying, "Hey, let's do it again. Let's do it again." And I really didn't want to do it again because I really don't like my other siblings all that much. But we did, and but that night we drank a lot, and not Steve, by the way, but Rana and Mike and nobody else, I don't think. In parting, Steve was very dedicated to my father after my mom passed, well, even before my mom passed, and taking my dad for his appointments, for his beard shavings, for his doctor's appointments, haircuts, I mean, things that needed to be done, the maintenance things, and Steve had time on his hands and he'd do it, and I thank him for that. He was also very helpful to Michelle and I when we'd go out of town for a weekend or a week or whatever for vacation. He'd take the dog, Olive, and take her for as long as we were gone, and without question, he'd just do it. And he'd say, "She's gonna be fine, she's gonna be fine." And really, I don't like that dog all that much, to be honest with you. So I didn't care if the dog was fine or not, but we'd always come back and that dog would be in one piece. So I thank Steve for that. But lastly, I don't know if there was ever a man that loved his daughter as much as Steve loved Amanda. That relationship is I mean, it's a quite special father-daughter relationship because I have two daughters, so I know. But he was 150% dedicated to Amanda, and if you can do that, you're not such a bad person. So anyway, rest in peace, my friend, my brother. I love you. I'll miss you. Jay Giles will miss you, Peter Wolf, and then a guy named Magic Dick, who is, I swear to God, that's his name, Magic Dick. Thank you very, very much for coming. Really appreciate it.
You forgot that the Dick Clark 5 will miss me too.
No. Thanks, Mark.
Mine's like
No. You gotta get a little
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming. It means a lot to me. And this is really short. I know my dad was a difficult guy to get along with at times. He was stubborn and very set in his ways. But he was my dad, the only one I will ever have, and I love him for all his faults and flaws. He was my best friend. So here's a reminder to hug your loved ones and tell them you love them, because life is too short. Dad, I love you forever and ever.
There's no more meaningful words, or loving words, or truer words that come from a heart of a child on a parent. Before we go on, I want to take just, I guess, role as clergy privilege. I made a comment before about the side of the family. There are sides of my family on the other side that I still love and care for. Right, Hershus? Okay. Didn't want you to think I meant you guys. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing, from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from defeat to defeat until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage. Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination, but life is a journey made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. May the memory, Steve, endure among us as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that in your light we shall see light. In life and death we cannot go where you are not, and where you are, hope endures. And I ask those who are able to rise for the memorial prayer. El Malay Rachamim Shofim Barmamim, Amsei Menucha Nacha Kanfe Hashkina, Im Kodashim Urim Kazar Harakia Misrim Es Nishma, Stephen, the son of Ralph and Marlene of blessed memory. Sholach Le'olamo Bial Harachamim Yastirehu Peseser Kanafol Le'olamim, Vayisror Pesor Chachayim Es Nishmata. Adonai hu nachalato v'yenuach v'shalom amish kabav v'amar amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Stephen, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us all say, Amen. Now we would lower the casket at this time. As I explained to the family why we do this at this time, is out of respect to Steve, that we here all have an obligation to make sure that he is placed fully in his grave, with us witnessing it, his family and his friends, and not later just left up to strangers who didn't know him to do. So you can be seated while they do this.